the silent signal. The skies above the planet Talva turned dark, not because of storm clouds, but because of fire and smoke from orbital bombardments. The once bright world had become a graveyard. Its cities, built from crystal and light, now lay in ruins. Fire rained from the heavens. The invaders were known only as the Morkan, cold, ruthless, and without mercy. Talvorians had always believed in peace. They were healers and scholars, not soldiers. When the Morkan attacked, they had no chance. Their own allies in the Galactic Circle had turned away. Help was denied. The Circle feared the Morkan. No one dared challenge them, with nowhere left to run. The Talvari leader, Grand Speaker Elo, stood in a cracked command center. The power flickered. The air smelled of burning metal. He looked at the broken screen showing red warning lights and falling defense lines. There's only one option left, Elo said, his voice quiet. Send the cry for aid. His aide, Myra, hesitated. But to them? Elo nodded. Yes. To the humans. No one in the circle spoke of humans anymore. They were Deathworlders, creatures from a world too wild, too violent. Long ago, humanity had joined the circle, but their strength frightened the others. Their weapons were too advanced, their will too unbreakable. So the circle pushed them away. Some even claimed Earth had vanished, but Earth hadn't vanished. It had just gone quiet. Now, Talva had no pride left. Their message was simple, desperate, and sent in the old, universal code: we are dying. Please help us. For across the stars, on the edge of known space, the signal reached an old relay. It hadn't blinked in decades. It was rusty, covered in dust and space debris. But it still worked. It sent the message to a station orbiting a quiet, blue planet. Earth.in, a deep facility hidden under stone and steel. The message flashed red on a silent console. One man stood watching the screen, Captain Reed. His eyes narrowed. He hadn't seen a real distress signal from the circle in years. Not since Earth walked away. He tapped a button. We have contact. Within hours, meetings were called. Officers returned to their posts. Pilots were summoned. The old war machines were uncovered from hidden bays where they had slept for years, and Earth decided to answer, not with words. Not with diplomacy, but with fire. On Talva, days passed. Most believed no one would come. Cities kept falling. The Morkan fleet circled the planet like vultures. Survivors hid in tunnels and shattered temples. Elo sat in silence, holding onto hope by threads. Then, one night, the sky lit up again, but not from enemy fire. A hole tore through the clouds. From it came a single, long, dark shape, black, massive, and shaped like a blade, then another, and another. A fleet of death. Their hulls were marked with a red symbol, the ancient sigil of Earth. No words were sent. No warnings given. The Morkan fleet moved to intercept. They never had the chance. In seconds, the air turned to light. Human ships opened fire with precision and fury. Entire Morkan cruisers exploded before they could fire back. Their formations collapsed. Even from the surface, the Talvari could hear the thunder in the sky. For the first time in weeks, the people of Talva cheered. Elo stared upward, eyes wide. They came. Myra stood beside him, voice shaking. And they brought destruction. The Death Fleet lands. The smoke above Talva's cities began to clear, but only because the battle in orbit was already over. The Morkan fleet had lasted only 15 minutes. Not one ship escaped. The human fleet hovered in silence above the ruined planet. Their black ships were not graceful like the Talvari vessels. They were brutal, made for war, with hulls like armor plates and engines that roared like beasts. Then, the lead ship descended. It dropped fast, cutting through the clouds like a sword. Its shape was unlike anything the Talvari had seen before. There were no lights for beauty, no art in the design. Just function. Power. Threat. The humans had arrived. In a wide clearing near the capital's ruins, the massive landing gear of the human warship struck the ground. Dust and ash rose like a storm. Trees bent under the force, and then, the ramp opened. A single human walked out first. He was tall, dressed in black armor with no visible weapons, but he didn't need any. His steps were calm, heavy, like someone used to walking through fire. A group of Talvari survivors watched from a distance. Some shook in fear. Others whispered old stories of the Deathworlders who could tear through tanks and silence entire armies. The human approached. "I am Commander Rix," he said simply. "You sent for help?" Grand Speaker Elo stepped forward. His voice was trembling. "Why, yes. We didn't know if you would come." Rix looked around at the burned trees, the broken buildings, the desperate faces. "You asked for help," he said again. "You didn't say how much destruction you wanted with it." Then he looked up to the sky, and more ships began descending behind him. Carriers. Dropships. Artillery walkers. The humans weren't here to rescue a few. They were here to end the enemy. As the sun rose, the Tal'Vari saw what the human fleet truly brought: hundreds of black-clad soldiers walking in perfect silence. Each one carried weapons that glowed with a deep, red energy. They moved like machines, but their eyes burned with fury. A giant walker, taller than the city towers, marched past the ruins. Human engineers followed, setting up field bases and scanning for survivors, but there was something else, an edge of coldness in everything they did. They had come to save lives, yes, but they had also come to finish the war. Later that day, the council shelter deep beneath the capital reopened. Survivors, leaders, and families gathered to see the humans. Commander Rix stood at the center. Elo spoke carefully. We offer you anything you need." "Supplies, fuel." "We don't need anything," Rix interrupted. "Just one thing. Coordinates." Elo frowned. "Coordinates? To every Morkan base. Every known planet they hold. Every place they touched." Myra stepped forward. "But we thought you were here to defend us." Rix's face stayed cold. "We are. But defense doesn't mean waiting for another attack. It means making sure they can never strike again." He turned and walked out. Behind him, the humans were already preparing the next move. This wasn't a rescue. It was the beginning of revenge. Strike orders across the stars in the command center of the human flagship Iron Vow. Red lights glowed softly over holographic maps. Planetary data streamed in lines of green code. The locations of Morkan colonies, bases, and supply hubs blinked like targets. Commander Rix stood at the center, surrounded by captains and tactical officers. His voice was calm but sharp. "No survivors among the Morkan," he said. "No mercy. No memory. Only silence." The officers nodded. There were no debates. No questions. Earth had answered the cry for help, and now it was time for retribution. On Talva, the citizens slowly began to recover. Human engineers cleared rubble and distributed food rations. Medics treated the wounded. Children who had not smiled in weeks began to laugh again, but there was unease too. Whispers spread through the survivors. The humans didn't speak much. They worked like machines, with discipline and focus that bordered on fearsome, and their weapons were terrifying. 1. Tal'Vari scout, young and curious, had wandered too close to a human artillery platform. What he saw stayed with him: giant weapons powered by energy cores, drones that moved faster than sound, and targeting systems that could strike a coin from orbit. Myra, watching the human camps from a hilltop, whispered, "They don't just want to protect us. They want to erase the Morkan." By the fourth day, the human fleet was fully deployed. Dropships rose into the skies like a swarm. Entire divisions of Deathworld soldiers boarded carriers. Weapons were loaded. Coordinates were locked in. 1 by 1, ships left Talva's orbit, silent, massive, and deadly. Commander Rix remained on the planet, watching as the fleet scattered into the stars like sparks from a fire. Elo approached him. "How far are you going to take this?" "As far as it needs to go," Rix replied. "Until there are no Morkan left to threaten anyone." Elo lowered his head. "We feared you once. The Galactic Circle, they thought Earth was too dangerous to be part of the Alliance. They were right." Rix turned and walked away, far away. On a cold moon orbiting a dead world, a Morkan commander stood frozen as alarms screamed across his base. His troops scrambled, confused. Ships exploded above them without warning. Walls cracked as fire poured from the sky. They had no idea who was attacking. No messages were sent. No introductions made, only destruction. One last camera feed caught the moment a human soldier, wrapped in dark armor, dropped onto the moon's surface and raised a glowing cannon. Then the screen turned black. Back in the Tal'Vere capital, families gathered in the ruins of a plaza. They lit lanterns to remember the lost. They whispered prayers. But for the first time, those prayers didn't end in silence. Eye in the skies, the stars flashed. It wasn't lightning. It was war, and Earth had just begun. Voices from the ashes. Tal'Vere's skies, once filled with smoke and ruin, were now quiet. Human machines worked day and night to rebuild the broken cities. Drones floated overhead, scanning for life signs and dangerous materials. Roads were cleared, shelters set up, and water systems restored, all in days, not months. The Tal'Vere watched in awe. No species had ever moved this fast, and yet, even as life returned to the surface, the real war had moved far away, from Tal'Vere's soil to the edges of the Morkan Empire. Every few hours, new reports came in. Morkan outposts wiped out. Shipyards reduced to debris. Warships destroyed before they could launch. The Deathworld fleet did not fight battles. It delivered punishment. Inside a small Tal'Vere medical center, Myra helped carry injured children inside. Human medics worked alongside Tal'Vere doctors. One soldier, a young human named Ray, gently wrapped bandages on a small girl's leg. His armor was scratched, stained with soot, but his hands were steady and kind. Myra watched him curiously. "You fight like machines," she said. "But care like healers." Ray looked up. "We come from a hard world. We know what it's like to suffer. That's why we don't want others to feel it." "But why destroy so much?" she asked quietly. "Why not stop once the Morkan left?" Ray's smile faded. "Because if we don't end them now, someone else will suffer later. You. Or someone like you. Earth doesn't wait for evil to return." Back in the command tent, Commander Rix received the latest fleet update. Morkan capital shipyards are gone, one officer reported. Their long-range communication satellites are down. Intercepted messages show panic across their frontier colonies. Rix gave a nod. "Keep pushing. We don't stop until their name becomes a memory." Then another message arrived, different from the others. A distress call. Not from a Tal'Vere. Not from the Morkan, but from a third species, one the humans had never met before. It was a whisper from deep space. "They are burning our cities. We are not your enemy. Please, whoever you are, stop." The officers paused. Commander Rix's brow furrowed. "They are not Morkan." "No, sir," the officer confirmed. "One of the species the Morkan ruled. Their colonies are getting caught in the destruction." For the first time, Rix stayed silent. Later that night, he stood alone in the ruins of Tal'Vere's great library. It had once held knowledge from across the stars. Now, only shattered books and melted consoles remained. Myra approached. "You heard the voices, didn't you?" she asked. "Yes. They were caught in the fire." He didn't reply at first. Then he said, "That's what war does. It spreads. We burn the roots, but sometimes the branches catch too." Myra stepped beside him, looking at the stars. "There must be a line somewhere." Rix gave a small, tired nod. "We'll find it. Before we become what we came to stop." The cost of fury. The stars were burning. Across the galaxy, the name Earth was now spoken in whispers, by both those who feared them and those who saw them as their only hope. The human fleet had not slowed. Morkan-controlled systems collapsed like towers of ash. Their fleets, once proud and feared, were scattered. Their colonies abandoned, but in the shadows of that destruction, something else stirred: regret. Inside the Iron Vow, Commander Rix stood before a glowing map. Red marks covered the Morkan territory. Some now blinked in blue, neutralized or freed. But others had turned yellow, civilian zones that had been caught in the fire. Reports came in of refugee ships adrift in space, their occupants starving. Entire alien families were fleeing from battles they didn't ask for. Species who had lived under Morkan rule for generations now found themselves in the crossfire between the old enemy and the Deathworlders. One human officer, a woman named Kara, approached. "Sir, should we pull back?" she asked softly. "We've gone beyond their military targets." Rix didn't answer at first. His eyes were locked on the yellow zones. "Have we become something else?" he finally asked. Kara hesitated. We came to stop monsters. And maybe we are becoming them. On Talva, life was slowly returning, the cities were rebuilding. The skies had cleared. The sound of battle had faded into memory. Yet, not everyone looked up at the human ships with gratitude anymore. Myra walked with Ray through the growing market zone. Children ran between rebuilt stalls and smoke from cooking fires rose into the air. People are starting to question Earth's presence, Myra said. You saved us. But some fear you might not leave. Ray looked up. Do you want us to? Myra paused. I don't know. I think people just want to breathe again. Without ships in the sky. Ray said. Nothing. But the look in his eyes showed he understood. That night, a new signal arrived in the Talvari Command Center. It was not a call for help. It was a message to Earth. It came from one of the species under Morkan rule. A race called the Alari. They were scientists and builders, never fighters. But now, their cities were burning. The message was short and filled with sorrow. You have turned your strength into storm. We begged for freedom, not extinction. If this is what aid looks like, stop. Commander Rix read the message in silence. The room remained still, then he gave a single order: recall the secondary waves. We are ending the full push. It's time we choose what we save, not just what we destroy. The fleet did not stop entirely. Morkan command centers were still targets. War leaders were hunted. But the blind fury was gone, and now the humans chose their strikes carefully. They sent medics to Alari space. Food drops followed. In one of the Alari cities, where fire had turned towers into bones, a human supply ship descended. A young Alari girl, eyes wide and covered in ash, stared up as the human soldiers stepped out. One of them knelt, offering water. She took it. For the first time in days, someone had come. Not to fight, but to care. Not just Deathworlders. The name Deathworlder once struck fear across the stars. Now, for the first time, it also brought tears of relief. The human fleet had changed. Not because it lost its power, but because it chose where to use it. On a scorched Alara moon, once a mining colony under Morkan rule, human soldiers weren't just searching for enemies anymore. They were digging out survivors from beneath collapsed towers. Engineers repaired broken energy fields. Medical teams used Earth's advanced tech to regrow limbs, repair organs, and calm terrified minds. Commander Rix stood outside one of the shelters. Around him, Alari families huddled together, watching the humans work. A small boy approached him, holding a fruit, half-burnt, bruised. Rix looked at the offering, then at the child's shaking hands. He slowly knelt and took the fruit. The boy smiled. It was the first gift Rix had accepted in years. Back on Talva, Myra and Ray sat beside a quiet stream running through the half-rebuilt capital. The water shimmered under the starlight. Human drones buzzed gently overhead, planting seeds in the soil. Myra asked, "Why did your people change the way you fought?" Ray looked at her. "Because someone reminded us what we were fighting for." She tilted her head. "And what's that?" He pointed to the children playing nearby. Talvari, Alari, even a few rescued from other colonies, all laughing together. "That," he said. "Not victory. Not revenge. Just life." In orbit, human captains sent out new orders: protect civilian escape routes, supply food and medicine to border colonies, strike only confirmed enemy military targets. The Death Fleet was still feared, but now it was also respected. Across space, species who once viewed humans as monsters now saw something else: guardians. The change was slow, but real. Messages began to arrive, not with cries of terror, but with cautious hope. "Are you the ones from Earth? We need food, not war. Will you still come? They hurt us too. Can we stand with you?" And the humans answered yes, but the Morkan were not done. Far from the front lines, in a dark fortress drifting in a nebula, the Morkan warlords gathered. Their empire was bleeding. They had lost worlds, fleets, power, and now they wanted revenge. The High Warlord rose. "Humanity believes it has turned the tide," he growled. "Let us show them what true darkness is." He raised a hand and an ancient command system lit up. A final weapon, long buried beneath the ashes of war, began to awaken. Back on Talva, Commander Rix stood by a growing monument in the city center. It was made from Morkan scrap, twisted metal turned into a statue of unity. At its base, a simple message read, "We called." They answered. But far away, something terrible had begun to move, and Earth would soon learn the war was not yet over. The final reckoning begins far beyond the peaceful stars. The last Morkan stronghold stirred. Hidden deep within a swirling red nebula, the fortress known as Varkos activated ancient systems older than most species in the galaxy. Energy surged through black towers. Weapons never before used came online. And at the center, inside a chamber filled with cold fire, the Morkan High Warlord gave the order, "Unleash the Devourer." A dark ship unlike any other crawled from the depths of the nebula. Massive. Silent. Built for one purpose, to erase entire worlds. It carried no fleet. It was the fleet. It didn't move quickly. It didn't have to. On Talva, peace had started to bloom. Rebuilt schools opened. Farms began to grow again. Human and alien children played together in the fields. Ray walked through the market, waving to familiar faces. Myra joined him, smiling as she handed out data pads filled with Earth's shared tech, education, water purification, energy generators. "You humans came with fire," she said softly, "but left behind light." Ray chuckled. "We just brought the best and the worst. What matters is which one we choose to leave." Suddenly, a loud alert blared across the sky. Red beacons lit up in every district. Commander Rix's voice came through the comms, "Everyone, brace for incoming threat. It's not a fleet. It's something worse." In orbit, the Iron Vow and the remaining Earth fleet formed a defensive wall. Human satellites scanned the approaching signal, massive, unnatural, and wrapped in dark energy. The Devourer, the moment it entered normal space, alarms wailed. It fired once. An uninhabited moon nearby vanished, vaporized, even hardened Earth. Officers went pale. "We've never seen power like this," one whispered. Commander Rix clenched his fists. "It's not just a ship. It's a planet killer." The Deathworlders acted fast. The fleet repositioned. Earth's most advanced weapons were deployed: gravity torpedoes, sunlance beams, and AI-controlled fighters, but nothing slowed the Devourer. Every second, it drew closer to Talva. Commander Rix made a hard decision. "Pull most forces back. Keep civilians safe. I'm taking the Iron Vow in close." Kara turned to him. "Alone. We have one chance to end this. I'm going to fly straight into its core." Myra stood at the highest tower, watching the black shape in the sky grow. Ray joined her. "He's going to stop it. He might die." Ray looked at the rising sun. "He knows. And he still goes." That was the Deathworld way. The Iron Vow charged forward, its engines roaring with every ounce of power Earth could give. Enemy beams cut through space. The hull burned, shook, cracked, but the human ship kept going. Inside the command chair, Commander Rix gave the final order: "Target its core. Full overload. No escape." The ship struck true. A flash brighter than any star filled the sky, then silence. On Talva, the people stared upward. The black shape was gone, only streaks of light remained, like a warrior's last breath. Myra whispered, "He did it." Ray nodded. "He gave us peace." Days later, a memorial was built from the melted steel of the Iron Vow. Its plaque bore simple words in many languages: "He answered the call. Not just with war, but with sacrifice." And across the galaxy, word spread: the Deathworlders did not conquer, they defended, they rebuilt, they remembered, and now the stars were safe. Again.